They kept saying in Ahsoka that Thrawn was this huge threat. Still waiting for that. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Ahsoka, but then we'll move on to other fun things. So they introduce him, and I just think that, why hasn't he caught Ezra this whole time? That was my first question. The fact that he hasn't caught him by now, especially with the aid of these new Night Sisters, or witches, Bene Gesserit ripoffs, especially with their aid, who can literally pinpoint anyone's location. Why didn't he find Ezra over 10 years? So what I thought would be interesting is if he did find Ezra, if he did capture him. Part of me started to wonder if that was the weird Enoch figure with the golden face. No. Golden face was just for toys. That was just a new dangly thing, which is ironic and unfortunate because they're not making any merchandise for Ahsoka. But that's literally what he was. That's all he was just a merchandising thing, and they can't even make merchandise from it. Same thing with Merrick. What was that? He was literally a fart in the wind. Nothing. And he was in 2 episodes. And they didn't even show how he came into being. Did the Morgan Elsbeth create him? Because they never said that. They never indicated that. If he had died and they at least cut back to Morgan as if she felt like a dissipation in her power or something, then we could have at least had some indication that she was responsible for creating him. But we didn't even get that. He's just gone. And no one ever refers to him again. And Enoch was just there to, I don't know, communicate between Thrawn and the rest of his forces. And that was it. Again, they're just toys. They're just this mysterious thing. And because the show's not popular, the whole IPs themselves have been degraded, that they didn't even decide to make toys for it. It just reeks of studio interference. That's what it is, because The Mandalorian started out decent. It was good. And I think it was a great idea to just create your own original character, have it exist in this universe, have it just be a nobody. Just this one low-level dude hunting bounties and helping his tribe, his Mandalorian tribe, and have it just be about that. But because it was successful, it was their only successful thing, the studio had to come in and say, oh no, you can't separate Grogu and Mando. We can't have that. Grogu's our highest selling merch. We need to have you reunite them as soon as possible, which undercut the whole show. That was the whole thing of both Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2. They just undercut that whole thing by immediately reuniting Mando and Grogu. And it just reeks of studio interference. I just can't believe that Favreau would choose to have the characters he conceptualized, Mando and Grogu, reunite immediately, and in another show, no less. Another completely different show. The main characters from your show are going to be reunited now. So when Mando Season 3 comes along, and they're together, it doesn't make any sense. Unless you watch Book of Boba Fett. But they had to do that because the studio decided we have to sell more stuff because it's the only thing that's selling, so we need Grogu back right away. So let's insert him in the new show that we have to promote, and we can promote it that way. Have that be the big thing. And Boba Fett's own show, the biggest thing and probably the best part was Mando's screen time. And again, just reeks of studio interference to me. Mandalorian had a fairly strong vision to start with. Yeah. And then it became hugely popular. And then they had to okay, we're going to restructure everything. This is going to be our way into an Avengers-like thing. We got to restructure. Every show is now going to have to point to the next show, the next thing, which will ultimately be the team up, which will ultimately be the Mandoverse movie, which is going to be the Thanos-like thing with Grand Admiral Thrawn. Yeah, they destroyed the entire Mando Season 1, Season 2 through Book of Boba Fett. I was excited for the two to be apart for a while, getting a little tired of the two together. Yeah, I was hoping that he would be on his own and kind of dealing with that. Dealing with his feelings for Grogu's absence. And I think it would have been neat for him to team up with someone else, like a hunter droid, is that what it was? Like a bounty hunter droid would have been cool. Especially, I think that would have been a neat chemistry. Have someone else fill that gap and have him go on his pilgrimage. You know, hunt bounties. Man, you can't fit a kid in that starfighter that he had. That was so dumb. He needed to get a new ship. He needed to get his bounty hunting ship back and just be that. Be this lone gunman. And I think it would have been much better if they reunited at the finale of the show. I think it would have been much more of an emotional impact. Yes, they completely ruined their comeback. They depressed their golden goose Favreau, and he's no longer laying eggs for them. Yeah, I think it's very telling that Mando Season 3 ended like a finale. Now, they say there's a season 4, probably not the priority right now, but it really seemed to end. They wrapped up all of the storylines, and he's living happily ever after with Grogu. So his story is basically over. The fact that he kind of wrapped that up, and that he's not the one helming the Mandoverse movie, I think is also very telling. Because if anybody should have been directing it, of the two, Favreau and Filoni, it's Favreau. I'm sorry, Filoni does not have the experience to do this. To do a live action film, a blockbuster live action film. And I think his current work in live action has done nothing but prove that, made it more obvious. I kind of like thinking Mandoverse ended with season 2. Yeah, me too. It's so sad. And it kind of makes you think too that it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And the fact that Mando season 3 exists, it kind of taints it unless you just like don't think about it. You know what also has strong vision? Andor. Yeah, thank God we're getting Andor season 2, and it will 100% end there. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about Andor, but it is the most competent show, which is a high praise. Now, Tony Gilroy was great. You can see his expertise. You can see that he's experienced in this. I will grant the sets, the details, the costumes, the stories, dialogue, just leagues better than what we've seen. I was disappointed in a lot of respects, though, too. And when it came to certain characters, so disappointed with Cyril. But it had really good moments. And I think the thing with me, though, with Andor is that there was no drama and tension for me, because we know where his story leads. So that's what was interesting with other characters, like Luthen, because they were new characters, which is what I think they should try to lean into. Because that was the only thing interesting, because you didn't know what was going to happen to them. So those parts were more exciting. And Andor didn't really feel like the main character at a certain point. I just felt like it should have a different name. These named shows, like even with Ahsoka is just one tiny character out of like all the characters. She has just as much screen time as Sabine, and Hera had a very good amount of screen time as well. Andor and Mando seasons 1, 2 work because they told their own story. Both can work as your first Star Wars or not. And I think for some, was it Star Wars theory, that it wasn't his favorite because what he likes is the more mythical aspects of Star Wars. And I get that. I understand that. I think there's room for both. I think the Mandalorian would have been cool just to be the Mandalorian and stay away from the Force aspects. I don't know. I think that could have been cool. Like to hear about it, to hear about Force users maybe. But and some people wanted the Mandalorian to be Boba Fett. From very early on, I'm like, I never wanted him to be Boba Fett. I would just want him to be some rando, someone new, because I didn't trust them to handle it. And lo and behold, when they did do with Boba Fett when they did it.